Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I am a woman on a mission to gather a cadre of writers, thinkers, and teachers who are transforming the world, one character at a time. And it all starts with one thing, a deep understanding of human motivation, why people do what they do, and the forces that drive them. To gain that understanding, I am mining the intersection of psychology, theology, and philosophy to make you a better writer. This is episode 74, Taxonomy of the Character Traits, Why the Struggle Alone is Futile. A while back, I spent some time working with an analysis of the character traits to put them into a taxonomy for a very specific purpose. And the purpose was that as a writer, very often we will have a character full-blown in our minds. We can hear his voice as clear as anything. We know how he's going to react in certain circumstances, or we can put him into the circumstance and watch. And yet we have a little bit of difficulty trying to name exactly which character trait describes this character. So I worked through for my students a taxonomy. I began with the fact that as the character traits were given to me, they came in a group of four main groups. So I looked from there to say, well, how can we break it down further so that you could go from a concept that was roughly outlined in your mind all the way down to the character trait. And it turned out not to be terribly difficult at all. You could ask some defining questions that made it very clear where the divisions occurred so that you could narrow down your focus and find the character trait that you were interested in. So consequently, when I began diving into this, and I should explain a bit of where I come from on this, which I will begin to do next episode, not tonight. This is just a brief side venture. But when I began diving into this excellent tome, Character Strengths and Virtues, I was kind of surprised to find early on that the authors actually lament that they were not able to produce a taxonomy of the character strengths. And so that made me wonder, how was it that it was turned out to be such a simple thing for me, basically untutored, as you will learn from when I reveal my origin story on this, yet they just seem to fall easily into a taxonomy. So upon reading this one and also another book, the How Emotions Are Made, which goes after trying to organize the emotions themselves, which turned out to be even more difficult. At least these guys, Peterson and Seligman, were able to come up with a good classification, if not a taxonomy. How Emotions Are Made, they ended up with not even having so much as a reliable classification. So what was the difference? And I realized when I went through the exercise that I was doing, trying to create for my students that tool that would let them go from the character in their mind's eye down to the character traits and then arrange them in a character profile diagram, that I wanted to go from a different approach. I took it on from the standpoint of the character traits, focusing strictly on the struggle that was being made, the struggle to perform in accordance with the most positive behavior, or as it was a struggle going to give way to a less positive choice. It was at the point in time where the struggle was kind of up for grabs. And that was the part that broke down so easily and smoothly into a taxonomy. And I realized that when you take a look at the other two approaches that I saw being made, the study of emotions gathered all of the emotions that people might be feeling and tried to organize them, and they just would defied order completely. Whereas the book Character Strengths and Virtues took it from the standpoint, we want character strengths, so let's organize these. Let's organize the victory states. And that doesn't work either. It comes a lot closer, but it doesn't work, as they themselves lamented. But the interesting thing is the struggle works very, 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 very smoothly. And that made me realize why it is that only the struggle works for taxonomy. And the answer turns out to be very, very simple. If you take a look at the outcomes, the victory or the loss outcomes of the different struggles of the character traits, you very quickly see that whereas the struggles are very unique and you can separate them into 28 of them, and there they are, and you can define them clearly and map out their edges quite well, no such clarity is available for either the victory or the loss states. Usually in the victory states, there's going to be some joy. Very, very, almost universally, there will be joy in the victory state. If in all of the balanced character traits, the victory state will leave one with a sense of self-mastery, of being a little bit more in control of oneself. All of them, not distinguishable. Likewise, the loss state is sorrow, a sense of regret, a sense of longing, a sense of being surrounded by chaos that permeates all of the character traits in the loss state. So because you get such amorphous and overlapping results in the victory and the loss states, only the struggle turns out to be organizable in the form of a taxonomy. So now I have to find out, I've got to broaden my search of the literature here, not to mention the fact that I'm only barely started on this fine tome here. I've got a little marker, but I'm not very far into it. That why didn't the struggle just occur as a natural point of origin? And certainly, if you're talking about character strengths and virtues, doesn't it seem almost natural that you'd want to begin with the struggle that gave rise to the victory that was the strength? So these are the kinds of questions that I'm bringing to my study. And this is what I want to share in my newsletter. And starting tomorrow, I'm going to share with you how I got here and why I think it leaves me in kind of an interesting position, and certainly at a minimum as it relates to fiction writing, an oddball combination of history elements that brought me to something that turned out to be shockingly valuable. So I will share that story with you starting tomorrow, and starting in my first newsletter, which will be coming out on May 1st, and I will tell you about how you can get that as we go along. That is the question that I'm going to pose in the May newsletter. The study that I'm making right now, is answering the question, why not study from the standpoint of the struggles? Why do these other approaches pick a different starting point? And that, to me, that's going to be fascinating. Maybe I'll just come up with all the starting points that they came up with, and maybe they won't even tell me why they didn't talk about the struggle. But it will be a fascinating journey, and it's one that I'm going to share with you in my newsletter if you just do decide to subscribe to that. So that's all for tonight. Thank you. Bye-bye.